Hey David, fancy yarn seems to be getting more popular in men's knitwear lately. So how do we actually control the quality of it?
Yes, the fancy yarn has been more widely used in the menswear production than ever. I think it's because the global fashion trend has become more and more simple, so the brand and designer wants to use more texture and more special look in the yarn to create a special knitwear style. But the most difficult thing, I think, is how to control the fancy yarn in the production. If you find the right yarn, you can actually bring the good look, but in the production, it's just so unstable. If you imagine the cotton yarn in their factory, they are producing the same yarn all year round. Maybe only the difference in between the 32 yarn count or 40. But the fancy yarn factory, you will imagine they are producing all different kind of fancy yarn from day 1 to day 2, or even from week 1 to week 2. So the machine has been always changed, the figures and the composition is also changing all the time. Even the same quality but different color can be quite different. So that brings the unstable situation for the fancy yarns. As a knitwear supplier, I think the most important thing to do is first to understand the correct character behind every fancy yarns, which means what kind of strands you need to use for this yarn, and also you need to know what kind of risks you will face in the production. I think it is always very important to prevent the problems before it happens. So to prevent problem is more important than solve the problem, because once this kind of yarn knitted into the knitting panels, it cannot change back, and there's nothing you can do more afterwards. So that's the number one. And second thing is that to work with the right yarn mill, because the price between different fancy yarn mill can be quite different, like 20 to 30% price difference. But usually the more expensive yarn supply in the fancy yarn usually has better development, but also have more stable qualities. So that is also very important. Maybe you save 10 to 30% in yarn price, but if you have more problems in the production, that can bring you even more loss than the price difference. And we also need to find a good yarn mill who can be responsible for their quality issues afterwards. And the third thing is, since we are menswear knit supplier, we are very selective on our yarn sources. We are not widely use all kinds of fancy yarns in our production. We only choose the only suitable one for the menswear. And our strategy is try to use the same yarn as more often as possible. Once we think the yarn is good, we try to use it more widely in different styles. That gives us the chance actually to learn the yarn more deeply and try to avoid the problems from time to time, so we can get better control in next time. And the third is that we actually working deeply with our yarn mill. That gives the chance that we can give the feedback to the yarn mill, then they can improve the yarn from lot to lot. The yarn is actually changing during different production lots, and they get improved already. So after many times production, the problem in the yarn actually being corrected already. So it become more and more stable. The last is actually we will be more strict control in the fancy yarn production than the normal yarn, because the fancy yarn actually is changing all the time. Maybe you use yarn one call from the development, but in the PPS the yarn suddenly changed, and also there's even change in between different colors. So we will try to test all the colors and try to make samples in every size and every color to make sure all the yarn is staying in the same look and same elastic. So that makes our work even more complex. But it is really crucial in the fancy yarn production that you need to check more samples to make sure that stay in the same way that you want. And overall, I think it is very important to find a very experienced knitwear supplier to make the fancy yarn production for you. And I hope all of you would have a good production in your future orders. We are Spreadlead. We only make men's knitwear.